the simplest way to try and think about it is that it is an environment. And by environment, I would mean the building, the service, how it's set up, the people, how they operate within it, what they think their job is, how they do their job, right through to things like the policies and the procedures and how the organization is structured. A psychologically informed environment in all of those areas would recognize that the psychological and emotional needs of the client group who they find themselves in relation to is paramount in the presentation. And as a consequence, all of those areas that I described before need to be informed by as good and as sophisticated and as evidence-based understanding of the psychological and emotional needs of the client group that they're in relation to. You would never think, for example, of having a wheelchair assessment clinic at the top of 3 flights of stairs and 2 escalators with no lift access. Very overt recognition that the needs of the wheelchair user are not being addressed by the access to the service. And yet, from a relational point of view, it's easy to put those stairs and those escalators in front of the person by saying things like, all you have to do to access this service is be able to make use of a relationship. That's all you need to be able to do. You just need to be able to come along and trust somebody. So to have a service where you are saying, to access this service, you need to turn up on time, you need to sit in the waiting room, and then you need to come through with a stranger who you've never met before and sit in a room and have the door shut behind you and then answer questions that they ask you. That's all you need to do. Is the equivalent for some people of the stairs and the escalators. It's just as it's invisible. We designed it with an idea of, well, I can trust people. I mean, we maybe never even thought that because we take it so for granted that we can trust people, or that we can connect with people, or that we can form attachments to people without any severe or major anxiety. You might expect things to happen like lots of DNAs, people not turning up for appointments, people saying they want care and then not coming along, people then coming along at other times and demanding care, and then when you offer them care, they don't want it. I think that's a rare thing to find. My own understanding of that is because relationships are so invisible to those of us who can do them like breathing. We don't even notice we're doing it. Yet, the only reason any of us are in the work that we are today or in the relationships is because of our capacity to form and maintain relationships. That is what describes our life to us in some way. But it's so automatic that we sort of forget about it. So I think a psychologically informed environment requires a sort of shift away from, not to exclude it, but a shift away from just a focus on the content of what we do. And by that I mean services can get very caught up in the business of what we do. We get bent out of shape when people do that, when they relate to care by doing things like not turning up. We assume it's just they're not turning up. And we come up with things like, oh, I just don't think they're engaging. Like, it's very rare in the health service to hear somebody say, I think they're engaging. I think they're engaging by not turning up. I think that's the nature and the quality of the engagement. Is this sort of trying to shine a spotlight on something that otherwise is really quite invisible. This sort of invisible relational process that goes on underneath, that is rarely articulated, that we don't pay attention to, but that we feel. I mean, we feel it very, very strongly when we find ourselves in relation to people who we experience as adverse to us. We find it adverse when we experience it as abusive or neglectful. It's very easy for us to forget about the relational part and just exclude the person or bar them or label them personality disordered or all the other ways in which we locate the problem into some of the most vulnerable members of our society. So psychologically informed environment tries to claw back on that a bit and really spend some time thinking about the sort of process of how we do things and the relational component of what goes on between us and the people we are in relation to, rather than just the content of what we are doing to other people.